Are your kids kind of giving you pushback on what they should eat? Like they used to eat a ton, but now they're kind of picky and they don't want to eat certain things and you're not really sure why? If that sounds like you, stay tuned to this episode where I will give you 3 tips to help determine how to get your child to eat more of a variety instead of caging you into only eating one thing forever. My name is Leslie Urbis. I'm a registered dietitian and a personal trainer. And as you all know, a recovering selfless overachiever here to help others really wholly embrace themselves. And today with me, I have a guest. Her name is Ella. Hey, how's it going?
Hello.
Awesome. So I know we were talking before the show with what's going on. Tell me a little bit more about what you're noticing around eating habits in your home.
So I am noticing that my son, he's 9 years old now. His willingness to eat more of a variety of foods seems to be changing and becoming smaller. Um, you know, that being said, he still likes things that most kids don't like. So he still loves vegetables like broccoli and asparagus, and he's proud of it to say that other kids don't like it, and he does.
That's fabulous.
But it's the protein that we're having an issue with. So when we go out to eat dinner, getting a baked chicken. I would prefer him not to have chicken fingers. I would love it if he would just eat like a chicken breast or something like that. And a lot of places have that. But he won't, he will barely eat a chicken tender. He always goes for a hamburger. Um, and or having salmon, which used to be his favorite fish. Now he won't have any. So it's those things that are concerning me. Because I want to make sure that he can grow as strong as he can and not shut down his the nutrients that can come in from the variety as opposed to having the same things all the time.
Yeah, totally. So one thing I just want to start with is good for him for eating all the vegetables. Uh, the second thing with protein, the good news is that if it's an animal protein of some kind, so animal or fish, he's getting all of the, depending on the day, the week, the month, uh, essential amino acids in there. The number changes based on, I think, the research at the moment, but essential amino acids. So the good news is as long as he's getting some sort of animal protein, he will get all of the essential amino acids, aka building blocks of protein for our bodies, right? So the good news is he's covered there. But what do you do when this occurs? So my top 3 tips typically veer around number one, having a conversation. I'm assuming you've started with that of like, why are we choosing not to? Does he give you a reason at all?
He doesn't. And that's another thing that we're working on. It's just I don't know. Which I get that at 9. How do we process those things? And we're working on helping him to process those things and use our words. Um, but right now, he just doesn't. Or if we attempt to have him to try something new, we wanted him to try a mushroom last night, which I get it. Mushrooms for a lot of people are gross.
Yeah, totally.
But we are trying to be at least try it once family. And he would have none of it. We were in public, we were in a restaurant, we weren't going to force the issue on him, but I wanted him to at least try, whether he liked it or not, to just try. So you have a reason to not like it, not just because, I mean, we know looks are everything and mushrooms don't look great. I'm not gonna
Mm.
lie, but they're so tasty.
Yeah. Yeah. So the first thing I would do in the conversation is maybe gear it towards people around him. So nowadays, in 2024, there's tons of videos and research out there that shows different things that can be bad or good with people that eat meat, bad or good with people that eat more plants, bad or good with this, right? We can pop on Netflix and there's billions of documentaries. And one thing that parents really don't process is that children are absorbing everything at all times, right? So it could have been that somebody at his school potentially put it into his brain. I know there was a period of time that I was vegetarian for about 15 to 18 months, and I talked about it on this of where I couldn't eat meat, and I did some healing around it to allow myself to bring myself back to eating meat, and it was all mental for me. So potentially there's a little bit of peer influence because, as you stated, he's 9. So now the peer influence kind of kicks up a little bit higher, and
Those
mom
are
and dad
literally
take a
things we talk about to let
good.
him know, because I know he has friends at school that have allergies to certain things, and I totally get that. But he will have told me sometimes, well, I can't have that because so and so is allergic. And I said, I totally get and love that you are concerned about their allergy, but that doesn't mean that you cannot eat it. You just don't let them touch it. That's what that means. But you can still enjoy it because you don't have an allergy and you still need to eat.
Yeah. So good things like that. And I oftentimes tell people that kids learn best through like experiments. So the same with like the mushroom. I love the conversation about the mushroom. This is really like tip 2. So tip 1, get them engaged in conversation. But 2, then show them. Kids are talked to all day in normal classrooms, right? And most kids learn best through experimenting, learning, playing. So one of the ways to best show like an allergy would be to like take the food and have it touch his skin. Okay. And then literally for yourself, do something where something you'd put on that would then, like, when you rub it off, either leave like a little red bump, or you could even put like, little red dots of marker on before you put something on your skin, and be like, this is what it would look like to them. They'd start to break out potentially in a rash. This is why they have this, not you. Right. Or even like a YouTube video to show something like that to gather in their brain. But with that same tip for the next piece of food is, most children start to like more foods by becoming engaged. So we as adults get very bored with food, right? If we're, most adults, there are some adults that love to eat the same thing. It depends on your digestion code type, right? So some people eat the same thing over and over again every day for years. Some, based on their digestion code, might eat the same thing for like 2 or 3 or 4 months, and then they're done with that, and now it's a new pattern. And they maybe go back to the old pattern eventually, but it's almost like a rhythmic change with seasons for them. So that could be a little bit. But then the last thing with that is that when you want them to start to gear out, it can be them going to the grocery store with you and helping you choose the meat, helping you choose the recipe, choose the flavor. Because just like a little kid, when we provide them with something like chicken, I've explained this to parents lots of times. My kid eats chicken sometimes, but not always. Okay, well, what did you do to the chicken? Chicken with just pepper and salt is different than lemon pepper chicken. It's different than chicken drenched in a gravy. It's different than cordon bleu or whatever. We see it as chicken. Okay, because we know, and we've had, umpteen years of experience with the food. But the child, depending on how old, doesn't have as much experience. Yours does, based on, what you had said about cooking. But potentially there's certain ways he may prefer it prepared, but doesn't feel like he either has a voice to say that or doesn't know. And involving him in that process will get them to eat more. My 4-year-old, when he cooks with us, he will eat 3 times more than when he doesn't, because he gets to see the food from beginning to end. So
Mm,
that's a way that when we start to pull back on what we eat, to re-engage, because they'll start to tell you in the process of cooking if there is something weird that's gone on that they're not telling you in the conversation. Because it
mm,
could be like, well, one day when I cut into it, it looked funny and I didn't like the way it looked. So it made it weird, but I don't want to tell you that because you cooked it. And I didn't want you to think I was being
right.
mean, because that wasn't it at all. Right. So that's kind of number 2 is, so number 1 is engaging, seeing if we can find out if, Johnny in class potentially watched something with his parents and then shared it at lunch, and he happened to be eating the food. So he felt very small. And so now he's geared back on foods that people don't talk about. Like most kids will eat a hamburger, right?
Hmm.
Then key number 2, getting him involved to see how that process could be. From grocery store through cooking is typically the best when it's a food that he used to love that he's no longer eating. So if salmon might be the case, from grocery store to cooking,
Hmm.
because we learn in the whole entire process, instead of, oh, I saw it in the grocery store and now I've seen it cooked by mom,
Right.
versus I've done all the work too. Does that make sense
Right.
so far?
Right. That makes sense. And you're reminding me, when I was a kid, I was vegan for a hot second, because I saw some. There was used to be this show. I don't remember the name of the show, but anyway, it was like Mr. Wizard or something like that, a science show, and they showed a cross section of a pig, And from that point on, and they told, this is where X and Y things come from. And after that moment, I told my mom, I was like, I'm never eating bacon again. I was probably the same the same age as Quinn. I was like, this is
There you go.
horrible.
Yeah, exactly. So we learn from that and through that, and we just assume because we take on some of our peers. So sometimes it takes that. And then I would say the third thing is, in his digestion code, just learning. So it's like my daughter is one of those people that is a cyclical. She will eat something for a certain amount of months. Like if I went through the breakfast in the past year, like for the longest time, we were eating sausage and waffles. And then all of a sudden we moved from that to like cereal and like a Greek yogurt. And then all of a sudden we moved from that to toast. I think it was like toast and sausage.
Yeah.
And now we're on really healthy Greek yogurt and like fresh farm made honey. And she absolutely loves it. I was like, okay, I don't know when the kick will end, but the day that it does, I'm just kind of stuck with what's ever left and I have to eat it or we have to get rid of it because it's just over, right?
Yeah.
So my thought process is that something? And autonomy. Around 9, 10, 11, children really, food is where we take our most autonomy. If you were to go to a hospital right now, the biggest complaint department is the kitchen. Because if the kitchen messes up what you've asked for, you're angry because when you're in a hospital, you can't choose when you wake up, how many people come to, interview you, what time your appointments are, how long you have to fast. You're at the beck and call of those doctors in the hospital and they choose, right? So food is our choosing. Okay. So we get to choose from our list and we think that we're going to get the food. And the one time you mess it up, people get really frustrated, right? Okay. Because this is the thing they can control. For children, 9, 10, 11, 12, they start to learn they can control here more. Okay. And most parents take a step back, right? We don't want to tell you can't, it's your body. So we teach. So interestingly enough, my daughter said something about worms the other day. She was like, well, if I ate a worm, it would just be muscles, right? And I was like, I don't think worms have muscles. We looked it up. Worms have muscles. I didn't know. Like I thought it was just like an exoskeleton that moves. I have no idea. So we learned this. But then we started talking, and my daughter was like, why do we eat muscles? And so we had a conversation about how muscle makes muscle. And I did like a little diagram and I explained some of the things in our body. And we looked at a couple pictures online for her to see that. Now, most kids his age probably know a little bit of it, but the more we can let them see to know, especially with boys, I've learned that muscle helps us make muscle and cartilage and blood and all the things that help us nurture to be big and strong. Most of them are like, okay, I'm back at it, right? And how the different types of meat can do that. So a lot of times just through education and just casual conversation at the dinner table when all hands are on deck, right? And the conversation is just around it. Oh, and bonus tip number 4, when you're introducing a food to a child, and I've said this before, is that whether they're 0 or 24 years old, I think now they say adolescenthood is like through 27 or 28 or something. I don't know. My mom told me this study recently. I was like, okay, I don't know. You're watching TV. I don't know. But a child has to be exposed, meaning on the plate, 7 to 17 times before they can even recognize a food. And then typically about 7 to 17 more times of having it on the plate, accepting that it's there, maybe touching it, playing with it before they might take it in and deciding that they will eat it. So with the mushroom, like I love it. Like just allowing him to be with it, to take time to consume it is really sometimes what children need because they're just, I don't know what that is. And you're right, mushrooms look terrible. They taste good, but they look terrible, And some people can't get over the way they look, And depending on where you get them from, some are really clean when you get them from a place and some have a lot of dirt on them. And so it detracts people in certain ways. So yeah. I think you're doing great, but those would be the kind of 4 tips I would say to really bring it back and, unearth more of his code, maybe through why he's choosing or not choosing to do certain things.
That I can definitely do. And I see where we are doing some of those things, like letting him have that choice. We don't tell him there. I will say, obviously, there are times when we go to the restaurant, we're like, you're going to have to do something different today, dude. But most of the time we let him order. He orders his whole meal. He knows how to do all of that. And But I was not aware that it had gone up from 3 to 7 to 17. I was still back at 1985 research for 3 times.
Takes a long time. Just like, it takes more touches to have a
Yeah.
conversation with somebody for them to know, like, and trust you,
Right.
all that.
Exactly.
Because the information overload, right?
Yeah.
And food is still information overload because, you were probably taught in 1985, a tablespoon, right? About the size of a thumb of each food to put on a kid's plate. When you put on too much of any food, the kid gets overloaded and withdrawn and
Right.
won't eat, period. So it's a
Right.
tablespoon for each year of age, right? Until they get to a certain age, and then they can kind of divvy it out themselves. But yeah,
Mm-hmm.
the less food on my son's plate at 4, the more he consumes and the more he asks for more. The
Yeah.
more food are the more times that, like, he doesn't help in the process, the less he will eat, and he'll just constantly want a snack. So I
Yeah.
totally get it. So yeah, for sure. So if you're looking for more information like that or anything, obviously, guys, like, share, subscribe to my channel. And thank you for being an amazing guest today. I really appreciate
Thank you
it.
for having me. I'm glad I saw the post so that I could get some answers.
Yeah, exactly. And if you guys out there would like to be a guest, please comment below or always reach out to me, and I'd love to answer your question here on my YouTube channel. I hope you guys have a great rest of your day. Have a fit and fabulous one. Bye for now.